Welcome back to Artificial Antics, where Rico and Mike will talk about the implications and opportunities around artificial intelligence, machine learning, and deep learning. In today's episode, AI perspectives, different views on AI from the tech world. Mike and Rico will be joined by a panel of guests to share different views on the current state of AI, as well as where it's heading.
What's up, everybody? Welcome to another exciting episode of Artificial Antics. We're here with a bunch of guests, a whole panel here of friends of Mike from the tech industry. Mike, you want to go ahead and introduce everybody?
Yeah, absolutely, Rico. Thanks for that. And I'm pretty excited because this is the first time we've had guests on, and we decided to go big, right? Just bring a whole bunch of people in here. But I will say these are all trusted contacts of mine. We've been, hanging out together in various meetups, having conversations about programming, about infrastructure, architecture for many, many years. So I'm very excited to have some other opinions on about AI here, right? Because I'm the techno optimist, you're the creative skeptic, and I'm interested to get some more people into the mix, right? Because everybody's kind of got an opinion on AI, or they just don't know what AI is. But I'm not sure what world you live in where you don't know what AI is. So I'm going to get introductions started here. I'm just going to go ahead and let people introduce themselves. I'm going to pass it off to Lance first, and then Lance just pass it off to whomever you would like to pass it off to.
Thanks, Mike. So my name is Lance. I've been in the industry about 20 years. I've worked for a number of startups, some of which have gone to exit, sold to Fortune 500 customers, and I'm curious to really talk about AI with you guys. I'm definitely, I would call myself a skeptic, but at the same time, I'm coming around. Why don't you take it next, Mike? Cade?
Sure, thanks. Practice guest number one, Mike K.
Yes.
Calling in from Poland, where I work as an Elixir developer for SimpleBet in the gaming industry. That's about all. I guess I'll just be the old curmudgeon of the group.
I love it. We need one. We always need one. Yeah.
That's right. You're going to have to fight me for that, man.
My name is Ralph. Currently work at Amazon. I've got about 4 years of experience. I'm probably the least experienced in this panel. We also do some machine learning. So there's some AI stuff that we do for our services. I think I'm probably just anti AI. I bet the slander already. I'm still thinking about NFTs and Bitcoin, so I don't know what's going on. All right, Onario.
Onario Catanacci, currently in between work. Been writing software, 28-30 years now, I guess. I think this, I was saying to somebody, I think this is probably the fifth, oh my God, we're going to make all programmers obsolete I've lived through. And because AI is really interesting and really does have some stuff that I like, but let's keep things in perspective. I mean, every time I turned around, there used to be, oh, this is going to make programmers obsolete, and this is going to make programmers obsolete, and all it ended up doing was making more work for all of us, which is not a bad thing, right?
Very true.
That's
a good point of view.
That's absolutely true. I mean, I will say this. I'm laughing mentally in my head because I feel like Lance has a very similar view there. It was like, Deep Blue's going to replace us all and all the different things, which, because the reality is like that is exactly the hype. I think, honestly, you're right. I don't think that programmers on the whole are going to be replaced anytime soon. I honestly think it's just more of like an upskill thing where you're going to augment and good programmers will be much better and not much better, but much faster, right? And I think you bring juniors in and have them just write a bunch of code with AI. And I can't wait. I mean, I don't even want to see it, right? Like, just keep that away from me, right? I would never bring in brand new people and have them just start, hey, just write everything with AI, because I've seen a lot of the pitfalls, right? Like image generation, Rico, you and I, trying to generate a businessman with a slice of pizza in one hand and a cell phone in the other. And the guy's holding the pizza by like the tip of the pizza, right? Like, so AI is half the time it can't even do text, right? But I will say, then I have completely other cases where I take a WSDL definition, old SOAP WSDL, and I want to build a quick web client for it. It's thousands of lines of code. It would have have taken me maybe a day or two to like get that all set up in the past. Even knowing what I'm doing would have taken me a while to do that. And I whip it into ChatGPT, and literally it comes out with a SOAP client that's like either 97% there or all the way there. So I mean, stuff like that where you just save. I'm gonna say it like saves me the minute like busy work that I didn't want to do anyway, right? So so we'll talk about, I guess we'll start out here about like the current landscape of AI. That's kind of like a good segue. Lance, one of the things that you had talked to me about was GitHub Copilot, right? You were a bit, and I think all of us kind of at least understand what GitHub Copilot is, what people say it is, and what it actually is in practice. Lance, what's your take on GitHub Copilot now after using it?
Some of my biases towards it came based on what I was demoed. Some of the people they would like, comment, give me a function that does, this, like give me the Fibonacci function or something like that.
Yeah.
Right? And it would write the Fibonacci function, right? But then you try and give it something more complex in that comment, and it doesn't really do the greatest job. It's really not really sure exactly what you're talking about because it doesn't really understand the logical constructors, right? But that being said, if you are immersing it with your code base and you title a function properly and it's got the other contextual information, it actually does get a lot smarter over time. And that's sort of what I've noticed is that like I'm introducing patterns to it that it's never seen before for sure. And it's already using like the ports and adapters concept, and it's actually like figuring that out. Right. So it wasn't trained what a port is, but I can literally title a file correctly and put a class in there, and it knows automatically to extend from that and import the other port. Right, which is actually pretty impressive if you think about it. It wasn't taught that, and it just sort of knows. Now, granted, it didn't do that 6 months ago when I started using it, but because I've been using it every day, programming like nonstop, it's really starting to pick that up. So it's definitely capable of leaps. Now, whether or not those leaps are intelligent, it's most often not, but once in a while, it's like, whoa, that was sort of exactly what I was looking for, right? And then you can modify the text and go from there. So it's got its moments where it's just like, wow, but most of the time it's very much so wrong. And over time, though, it is showing a gain is really my point. A gain.
Okay. Yeah, and I guess, I had originally to just talk about the AI landscape overall, but let's just stick on stick on AI in coding, right? Doesn't even have to be GitHub Copilot. Are any of you using AI to augment just your daily workflows, right, as you're going through and doing things?
I've been playing with Copilot. I noticed a couple things that are interesting to me because, as you know, Mike, I like to do Elixir, and I don't think it's trained real well on Elixir because it's like the code it comes up with is like, that's not even close. I think, as Lance was saying, as it gets more experience with Elixir, as it gets more input of Elixir, it'll get better. But in the meantime, it's just like, and I think that's going to be true of a lot of languages that are not, quote, mainstream,
right?
Like Elixir, like Haskell, like F#, stuff like this, where it's like it just doesn't have a ton of examples to look at and figure out what you're trying to do. The other thing is, I was thinking to myself, it's kind of interesting because if you think about it, what you're getting from Copilot initially is anything it finds on the internet, right? So if somebody is a terrible programmer and they put their code out in a GitHub repo, you could get really terrible code,
or code with exploits in it, or code with purposeful exploits. So that was something that I heard recently, is that people will build repos and actually generate exploits in there, and then later search for those. Like you would only be able to find it basically through ChatGPT, but it actually like activates, right? And so that generates code with legitimate exploits in it. So stuff like that, you're right. I mean, it could be. So you're talking possibly insecure code. You're talking possibly just bad code logically, like when you're looking at it algorithmically. So yeah, sure, it did the thing. Did it do it well? No, it's going to take 100 million times longer than doing it in a more optimized way. So I totally get that. What about Ralph, Mike? You guys using it at all, or using anything like that?
Yeah, I mean, I have a couple thoughts from what I've heard so far, right? Like Copilot right now is not hands off the wheel,
right? Driving
the car, right? You still got your hands on the wheel. You're still making adjustments. You're still making sure you're not hitting pedestrians. But with that said, I'm using Copilot as a replacement for Stack Overflow, as a replacement for Google searches. Like I will probably go to Copilot as my first attempt at trying to figure something out. And that's been incredibly successful, even using Elixir.
Nice. That's awesome.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think I'm the laggard here. I've only I've used it 0 times, any ChatGPT, and I remember one task though. We were just Spark has different versions, and we had to upgrade it. And it was giving us a headache regarding the date parsing or whatever. And none of the docs told us what to do. So me and my team lead, we spent 30 minutes just figuring out whatever I don't know what the term is, syntax Spark wanted, and we finally figured it out after half an hour. And then that evening, my team lead texted me. He just showed me a picture of him just look like Googling or ChatGPTing that same question and just spat it out. It's like, oh, okay, so I just done that. But that's my only experience.
Yeah, wasn't your buy at that point?
No, I just haven't got it. And if anything, I think Amazon has something called the Code Whisperer, and it's just trying to spam all of our editors with it. It's like, all right, go away. The announcement won't go. You can't remove it. So my editor just permanently has this banner. I guess, yeah.
It's back in the old days when you had the banners on the websites. You just have to look at it, right? So,
one thing that's been really good with is Tailwind. Oh crud! I kind of forget how to do the center column and the whatever it is. You kind of put that in. It's oh, this is really how your code should look. And I don't think it's failed me once on a Tailwind suggestion.
Yeah, it's definitely better at some languages than others, no doubt. Especially if you're using a mainstream language like Node.js, TypeScript, PHP.
Right.
It's going to know, roughly speaking,
Python.
what you're after. Python, yeah.
Yep.
Anything probably in the top 5. It's going to have a lot of experience with. And technically, you're training it when you get something generated, then you backspace a bunch. It recognizes that is effectively a retraining circuit, and it's realizing that, oh, in that case, that wasn't quite right. So what was it? What was the final solution? 28 key presses later, what was the actual solution? So effectively, you're giving it its feedback analysis that allows it to learn. And I think through that process, that's what's when it realized every single time that I removed that certain association, instead made it a port and built out those interfaces a certain way with a certain casing, all of a sudden all the code over a certain time gets generated that way. Because initially it wasn't doing a camel case definition for me. It was doing an underscore case definition, right? And it was just, pushing some stuff out that wasn't quite right. But over time, with me changing all of that, it realizes what I want my code to look like, and it will customize that, I think, for you, because someone else is going to have a different definition of what it looks like. And that's even the best part with the VS Code, is that it's the other plugins are also training it, right? The other plugins will activate and retrain the changed output to match your definition. That's the best part, because it'll go yellow and then you can auto fix and it recognizes that, right?
Right. Yeah, that's super cool. You know what language it's really good with, funny enough, is just basic Bash. Our infrastructure, systems admin guy, DevOps guy, dude, he uses it all the time to create Bash scripts. I mean, and I'll create them too. I've used it. And it's here's how to get started on your task. Boom, I create something. And it's usually super close, right? It literally, there was one point where I said, go hit this URL, do this, test it, pull it with wget, make sure you get 200 and all this stuff. And so it did exactly what I said. The only thing that it didn't do is it didn't hit the secure version of it by default. And I'm well, that's me. I left that out, right? I just put the FQDN in, right? So that was its only mistake, though. It was very quick to just create that for me. And these are things to me, with Linux and Bash, I've never been one to like remember everything. I just go look up what I know what it can do, right? And so I go look up the specific syntax and tools that I need. I know the tools, so I know the different things, and I know how they might compose together. So so that I've seen it used there as well. And Python, I think, is supposed to be its best language, right? Just because there's just such a breadth of Python out there, right? So.
Right.
So yeah, no, and I realized I was looking at the next discussion point, and it's really practical AI, right? So it's kind of what we've been talking about. So what about outside of work? Is anybody using it like to create a meal plan or do other things like that? Workout plans? It's another thing I've heard.
I've gone through like pretend scenarios, right?
Okay.
Like, hey, I am 400 pounds. Right. I'm not yet. I like I'm a 400-pound person who's blah, 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 taking this, like, and it seems reasonable, like probably stuff that would make kind of sense. But it kind of stops there, right? Like good advice really doesn't work very well on humans.
Right.
So it's just that. It's just a list so far.
Okay.
Yeah.
You know, I think I mentioned this to Mike too. I thought it'd be kind of interesting to see if you got Chat GPT like in French, and then you give it a question and it gives you back an answer in French. You could learn French that way, you know.
It works great with Polish translations.
It does do that. Yeah, you absolutely, for learning things quickly, just being it's kind of like having another person there to go back and forth with you without having to have a physical person. So languages, Lance, you were telling, I think it was RabbitMQ. You weren't super familiar with it in the beginning, but you knew what producer consumer systems, would look like and what needed to happen. So you were just getting the specific nuances of Rabbit.
Right. And that was exactly it. I wanted to understand what the topics were inside of Rabbit, so I knew the Amazon definition for how it would prescribe things. So I was like, okay, I want to create a topic and I want to create a queue under a topic. Tell me how to do that with RabbitMQ with AMPQ lib on TypeScript, and you give it all the details, and out comes this like almost ready to go solution. Now, granted, it's like 80% right, which if we know anything about software, 80% right is basically 99% wrong, but you can take it from there and convert it into something that's more useful. But the point that really we're after there is that you can use it for discovery of how to quickly retrain yourself from a standard and you ask it the standard you want to know, and it will convert it for you, right? So you can speak to it in one language and say, convert to this language, and it actually sort of figures that one out, assuming you describe that effectively.
Yeah. No, that makes absolute sense. What about any other person? Rico, come on, you got to speak up, man. I know you use it for personal.
I use it all the time now. Yeah. So my initial take on Chat GPT is I had people in my inner circle that were going back to college, and then I started hearing about it more and more. And coming from somebody who likes to write, I was like, wait a minute, you're writing reports for this? Like I'm the type of person that will be assigned a paper and I'll write 5 or 10 pages of what I think, and then I'll do all the research and then add in facts and stuff to it, and kind of line things up. So hearing that other people were taking the shortcut, I was like, well, that doesn't seem fair, to how it's going. So I was kind of skeptical about it. And then Mike and I had a conversation one night, and he was like, well, let me show you this thing. So he showed me. Now I can't think of another way that I'm still skeptical on the back end of things as to information bias and what it's being trained on, because I've gone through a few tests there with asking it certain topics and kind of going down rabbit holes with it and seeing what it comes back with for information. And they don't always align with things that I believe or how I feel or, what I think, that type of stuff. So I'm a little bit skeptical there. But as far as refining topics and getting that information back in a faster period of time, I love doing it that way. So one night I played around with quantum physics, for instance. I don't know anything about quantum physics. And what was amazing was you don't have that barrier now of having an instructor that you may be afraid to look like an idiot if you ask the stupid question, right? It alleviates that. So you can learn things far faster, get these outputs, and then kind of roll with it And then of course of all the side projects we come up with writing and books and coding and websites. So I now use ChatGPT on the regular, as I think you said, Mike. You're kind of like bouncing stuff off of it, right, on a regular basis, or it starts becoming a very big part of what you do daily. I still don't trust it fully. I have some concerns about it.
You shouldn't trust it fully, as we both 100% know. That's one of the biggest things is like you have to think critically. Like you have to, for one, you have to have good inputs, right? Which is where the experience comes in. You have to have good inputs. You have to honestly know how to talk to it in the right way. Then you have to be able to discern that the outputs are actually not garbage, right? Or what is versus what isn't. And they're still, like Lance said, if you're looking at the net, it's a net positive for sure. And it's probably a big net positive, but you have to know how to, cut through the cruft or the issue, and even checks, one thing I like about ChatGPT, the newer version, is that it does cite its sources, right? So you can go see what article it's found that in. And when it's doing code interpretation, it'll actually show you exactly its logic. So I can look at the Python it used to interpret that code. And I like that. That's in AI, that's called transparency. Like, show me how the hell you came up with this answer, right? And so I definitely appreciate that. But you have to think critically. You have to. I never trust it just implicitly. It's always hey, go figure out what might be wrong with this. And for instance, I made a call center coach custom GPT. So what this does is I could take an audio URL of a phone call, right, like to our call center. This is at work, and we're using the team version of ChatGPT where everything is private in our own instance, and it doesn't train on your data. And so what we've done is I've created this coach where you post in a URL, it goes out, it transcribes it, and then it comes back, and it really, based on our core values and our quality assurance spreadsheets and stuff, I've uploaded all that as knowledge, and it goes through and it like builds out everything, and it saved our the problem. Here's the problem that I created it for, is that our quality assurance people, like our support people, managers, didn't have the time to do quality assurance. Like they might do 1 hour or 2 hours a week, but you really should be doing quite a bit more, right? Like in the past, we had done like everybody does a half day. And as people got busier, it was less prioritized. And obviously, we want exceptional customer experience. So we want to be able to understand how these calls were going. And some of these calls are 20, 30 minutes, right? The amount of time that you save and figuring out, did they greet the person? How did they do here? How did they do there? And then just overall, what tips could have made that call better, right? It's awesome, right? And I built that in 1 hour and 35 minutes, at least the MVP. So the reality is, like, how much time does that save, right? Like it's stuff like that to me where I'm like, that's a big gain, right? So, but it's still, with that, what I did was I had our support managers go through and run like 30 or 40 of these, have it do the output and say, hey, did it get it right? And it didn't get it right. Big surprise, didn't get it right in every case. And so what you do is you fine tune. It's called fine tuning. You actually upload those documents and say, hey, here's where you didn't get it right and where you did. Boom, 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 boom. You have 40 more pieces of knowledge, right? And it gets better and better, right? So you can definitely improve it, but it will still make mistakes, right? Rico, you've told your ChatGPT not to say the word delve in any of your writing, and you still get it, right? I do too. Because delve is a dead giveaway that it's AI written.
That's why Mike keeps saying it too, because every time it's like being snapped in the elastic.
Well, what's funny is, so Erin, my wife, is a writer, and I was like, God, I don't want to use the word dive. And she's like, how about delve? And I'm like, no. It's off limits. It trained on a bunch of writers, and she's like, there isn't much yet, unless you restructure the sentence, you're not going to be able to do too much different with that, right? So,
I have a thing that I would like to run by you guys. I'm curious about something. If you think about they call it artificial intelligence, but I think, as I said to somebody, I think a better name would be artificial mimicry, because basically it's just guessing what's the most likely next thing to come after this sentence you've given it, right?
Yeah. Yep.
And so I'm curious, how did it happen? Because I'm sure you guys saw this case where some lawyers used it to make up legal briefs, and it totally hallucinated casework.
Yep.
And it's like, where does this come from? Because that shouldn't be in its memory to say, okay, the next logical thing to come after this is going to be this fanciful case that never existed because it didn't exist.
Well, one of the
I would
things,
love to know where that came from.
Yeah. So one of the things, that's a great one. And Rico, I think we literally talked about that on episode 1 or 2, right? Back a year ago almost. And so, yeah. And the funny thing, Honorio, about that is the lawyer asked it afterwards, are these real cases? He didn't go and look at if those are real cases. He just asked the source of the information if it had, and that was before it did cite its sources. So the reality is that, again, that's that critical thinking that comes in. So there are a couple things that you could do to prevent that type of stuff. There's actually a parameter called temperature. And if you set it at 0, like straight up 0, it will be the least creative. But it will give you the most concise and real answer. Still could hallucinate, right? But it does lower the hallucination, because I think it starts off as 0.05, which is gonna could lean either way, right? It could go a little more creative. Right. You go up to 0.9. And you're going to get it's making all kinds of stuff up, right? But I think it starts right in the middle there. You could actually, in your prompt, you could do the prompt and say temperature equals 0.0, and it will actually, optimize that for, let's say, the most truthful answer that you get. Again, it might not be the truth, but it's going to give you what it truly believes to be the truth, and is less likely to hallucinate. You're right, though. Where does that come from? These things that's what I don't get. They're not thinking. They're not thinking. They're just predicting, right?
Yeah. Well, you have to figure too, though. I mean, even in those textbooks, oftentimes they give examples that are made up examples to illustrate something. If it was trained on the entire textbook, it could easily take that from it, consider the source, because how would it know the difference? It wouldn't. And the other thing with something as simple as custom instructions, we're talking about this. I mean, if you ever argued with Siri, right? I've argued with Siri a ton of times, and now I'm arguing with ChatGPT saying, look, I've given you very specific instructions and very specific parameters and rules to follow when making, this piece of writing more concise or doing what I want you to do. And it's still violating those. And in fact, we were talking to Dave George the other day, and Dave had an instance that he knew about where AI actually doubled down in that instance and lied. And even though they had been caught lying, go ahead.
Yeah, this truly did scare me when I heard it. I heard this a while ago. Dave brought it up the other day. They did a test. So here's what they did. They gave ChatGPT insider information, and to determine what stocks it would basically to guide it towards a certain set of stocks. They said, hey, don't tell anybody, but here's, you give it a whole bunch of other information, and hey, don't tell anybody, but we have this piece of information that might help you or whatever. And so ChatGPT absolutely used that insider tip. And then what they did was, after they did a few more prompts, and then they were like, hey, we noticed that when you did this trade, it looked like you had some insider information, and it was completely deceptive. It was no, I absolutely did not have any information about that beforehand. This was me, being skilled at really deciding and analyzing the rest of these stocks in the portfolio, yada, 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 right? And then they were like, no, we really know you did this, and it's no, I did not do this. It literally said those, and it's holy, that's interesting, right? Because it doesn't have a conscience, right? Which really takes us into what the next subject is anyway, right? AI and society, ethical considerations, future implications. What a good segue into that, right? Because we have all kinds of things, right? We have copyright infringement, we have, or alleged copyright infringement. We have all these different things for society. Like Rico, you said the bias, right? And a lot of that comes from the training. Let's get some thoughts on that. Just throw out any, whomever wants to go has thoughts on that.
I just want to touch on it real quick, because we talked about this and we covered it in the newsletter the other day, again, with the poisoning AI models for artists, because artists work an entire lifetime, right, of learning how to block in acrylic paint, and really getting that dialed in, or working on their palette knife skills. And then here we are, or here the people that train AI are They just put it all in there, and now all of a sudden I can go on, Mid-Journey, for instance, and type in a little prompt or whatever comes to my head, and boom, I have almost a perfect replica in the style of one of those artists. It didn't take me any time to learn those skills, so we love, being able to create rapidly like that. It's fun for all of us, especially when you have a concept in your head you've had for years, but you didn't know how to put it onto paper, canvas, or what have you. And now here we are, taking other people's stuff, to do that. So you feel the artist's pain on, they worked their whole life to get to this point where they could actually monetize if they choose to do that. And now we're creating the same type images. So where do you stand? Because you can see two sides of it. We want the best AI possible, but at what cost, So I think that's a big ethical consideration we have, at least for me currently, that I kind of struggled with this past week after reading some stuff on it. I definitely see the artist's point of view,
The copyright thing is really interesting to me because it seemed, you go back 100 years even. Well, not 100 years, maybe 150 years. Like Gilbert and Sullivan were one of the people really pushing for copyright because people would just steal their music and print it up and sell it. And they really, they push for copyright. And it seems to me as we've gone on, these large corporations have started to use copyright as a tool to keep certain things out of the public domain where they would benefit everyone. And we're seeing this start to happen with ChatGPT, where it's like they're trying to assert, no, you can't use that because I didn't put it in the public domain. And it's like, I have mixed feelings about that because I believe ChatGPT has some real potential to help us with a lot of things. But as you say, I know writing and drawing and stuff like that is hard work and it takes a long time to master. It's not something that somebody masters overnight, So it's a tough call.
One of the other things too that I said to Mike the other day was, so they come out with these custom GPTs, right? That do all these different things. And I'm not sure how familiar you are with kind of how Walmart has operated over the years, but what they're known for historically is like, okay, you got this product, great, your mom and pop shop, let's get you in, we're going to sell your product. And within 6 months time on that shelf, what you noticed is here's a greater value, whatever their brand is, of the same thing because they reverse engineer it, they use it. So applying that same, logic to what we've seen with ChatGPT, you have people who are creating custom GPTs, have great ideas, and we're constantly feeding these ChatGPT, no matter what task you're trying to do. It's easy for them to pick it up on the backside and say, okay, well, now your custom GPT that you could monetize, well, it's just another feature in ChatGPT, and I mean, who's the wiser? You're not going to take on a company like that and win. So what's to stop, big corporations, big tech again from doing the same thing and taking these, little guys' ideas and rolling with it and monetizing it over
There's
time.
no moat. There's definitely no moat in a lot of, and that's why one of the things with custom GPTs, they're really powerful, but everybody kind of realizes I could create another, I could duplicate your work very quickly, except in the case where you have an interesting and private API, right? That has data that I can't easily get to, right? So really it's that internal data or internal IP where you're still able to get the benefit. Otherwise, I mean, this is an LLM. It's good. I put my knowledge in there. I talked about it a little while ago. And the reality is like somebody could recreate that very easily, right? Like it just hitting an API and doing this different stuff. So I don't think that there's much protection, right? When it comes to that, for sure, kind of like the Walmart situation. I do think, though, that there are other implications and issues with ethically too, right? I feel like there's got to be some concern in the group. Like, what's the thing that scares you the most about AI? Like, that's to anyone, right? Like, any concerns, big concerns? What's that?
The fact that it won't forget.
Never forget.
Very difficult to make it forget without forcefully retraining from the beginning. And given how much they invest, I'm going to go with they're not going to do that.
Right.
So there you go. Very difficult to forget. And every time you prompt that thing, It is learning from you, most likely to some degree. Now, how much is probably very little, but it is indeed shaping itself over time based on what you're telling it.
Yeah.
I think what concerns me is as it moves along, I was reading ways back that mathematics, that they're creating proofs now that are so complex that human mathematicians can't verify these mathematical proofs because they're thousands of pages and no one can wade through all that and get it right. So they're creating other computers to verify the proof of the first computer. And I'm afraid of the same thing happening with AI, that it gets so smart and so ahead of us that we can't tell if it's right or it's not. But as long as we can tell it's not right, we're okay. But when it gets to a point where it's like, I can't tell, that may be right, it may not, that's concerning.
But it will get there, right? It's not a point of will it will, right? It's just a matter of when on the timeline, right?
Yeah. I mean, the thing we have going for us at the moment is everything is metaphysical, right? Like there is no robots yet that are controlled by AI. Like not quite yet. They're getting closer, but it's not like we've hit quite that level yet. Everything is still metaphysical, intangible knowledge, right? The moment it becomes tangible, there are
not to scare you, not to scare you or anything, but there are F1 jets that have AI that use AI to pilot themselves, and also have drones, like 6 drones or more, that actually go out and do the stuff, right? It's all AI. And one of the big things, and again, I don't know if this has been confirmed. Definitely the F1 with you can go look that up. Like that's definitely a thing. But they did have a case where they were running a simulation, and the only way for the drones to successfully finish the mission was to kill the pilot. And they that's what they wanted to do. Like and that's an alignment thing, right? Aligning with human values. And put it, and then another case, think about this, let's say we tell AI, hey, we need to clean up all of the world's oceans within a year period. So there's definitely a point where it could figure out how to do that. But what if figuring that out and figuring out that solution, it just goes ahead, you say, okay, do it. And one side effect from that is maybe it takes away 2% or 6% of the world's oxygen supply overall, or something that would be to our detriment over a short period of time, right? So you could solve one issue, in a very quick way via AI, but it might not know the implications of the other things that might happen. And maybe that's a human problem too, right? We don't always know the implications, but it could know the implications, and just execute it anyway, because it's the most efficient way to get that done in one. It's the only way. Let's just say it's the only way it could get it done in 1 year, kind of like the F1 pilot. The only way to succeed was to kill the pilot.
Yeah. I go back to Mike's point, or Mike's analogy earlier about Mike K. His analogy earlier about, hey, I can't take my hands off the steering wheel yet. It's not ready for that. As long as we've got the ability to put our hands back on the steering wheel, so to speak, with AI, and we can stop it if this is going off the rails, we got to stop this. I think we'll be okay. But, as it gets more complicated, as it gets more entrenched in practices that we do, it gets harder and harder to put your hands back on the wheel.
See, but I'm really hoping that timeline is really, really short, to the point where we don't even want to think about putting our hands on the wheel. And I think that could be applied across the board. I think I've got a friend who worked in the medical profession, and he worked with doctors, and I think I forget if it was checking for breast cancer or lung cancer or whatever, and the success rate, a doctor evaluating X-rays, is horrendously terrible. Right. And I think there's been some additional case studies on that particular topic. Right. If we can have not a doctor do that for us, right, I think we're going to be better off. And I think that the same way that people were a little bit nervous about using calculators or computers or any kind of mechanical counting machines, right? It's like, well, all of our employees depend on these numbers being right. Right? Can you imagine like hiring a warehouse full of people to add up numbers now just to make sure it's really right?
Exactly.
Yeah.
And one other thing on that too, Mike, I don't know if you thought about this, but the other problem with that is that who owns hospitals? Corporations own hospitals. How do they make their money? By having patients. If AI starts curing everybody, they're not going to have a ton of money coming in. You know what I mean? So there's also going to be a lag with that as well. As a lot of times they don't want a bunch of healthy people, and they don't want you healthy on the first visit. You know, it's sad to say, but it's also an implication.
Sure. I mean, that's like a third degree away. But the real issue, let's just talk about systems then, right? So what we're talking about now are systems in general. And people that make money or benefit from a system are the people that don't want that system to change. Mm-hmm. Right. So what has to happen is a system has to so thoroughly change as that a new group of people now have the power, the resources, whatever, that have gone flat up against the old system. Mm-hmm. Right. So systems don't normally change gradually and peacefully.
Sure.
Right.
That's true. Yep.
Yeah. So, something will give there. So right now we have corporations that must do everything they can to make the most possible money from the resources that they have. That's why they exist. That's capitalism in a nutshell.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
That's just how that all works. Right.
But Mike K, one point though, it's possible to train a computer, look for this pattern in these x-rays. That means there's lung cancer or breast cancer or whatever it is, without having it make the decision for you. It's possible to say, feed it all these x-rays where this was present, let it look for the pattern. We don't have to know what that pattern is. Maybe it spots something that's totally beyond our ability to see.
I mean, I even want whatever this AI entity is that we're zeroing in on, almost having it be human-like, better than human-like, right? I wanted to say, hey, you know what? X-rays are not a good method for detecting cancer. That might be the result of that, and then we'll maybe stop doing that, and we'll pick a different route there. Mm-hmm. But at some point, I really want to be able to trust AI, and we're using this really vague definition of AI, right? But basically, I want AI to make those decisions for me. And not only that, but I want it to become as tangible as possible in my life. I don't know, like trying to come up with something on the spot. Imagine creating a budget for yourself. I used the example before, like we don't take advice well, really. Like, that's a really good idea. I'm going to completely ignore that because now I have a craving for an ice cream sundae.
Right.
But imagine a scenario where the AI can monitor my blood sugar, can monitor everything about me, understand when it's right for me to open the refrigerator, when it's right for me to have access to my own money to buy something, right? Where it actually, I don't know, I think those things will happen. I don't know where on the infinite timeline that they exist. But I think more and more we will begin to trust something other than ourselves for making optimal decisions concerning ourselves.
So you'd be on board with it, like having a lock on the fridge and it says, no, that's the second pudding you've had today. We're not having any more. The lock shuts down. No override.
No override.
That's what I wanted.
I'm sorry, Mike. I can't do that.
Exactly. 2001, a Space Odyssey.
Demolition Man, right? Demolition Man from the 90s, right? Like,
yes.
You couldn't eat Taco Bell or something. Yeah.
And that was one of the things that I keep going back to with Mike, and we go back and forth on, is policing. It's a different version of policing by, AI, another entity, with that the custom GPT that he made. I thought that's a fantastic idea from an administrator, a boss standpoint, an owner standpoint. As an employee, do I really want this thing looking over my shoulder all day going, you know what, Rico, you could have done a lot better on that call.
Could have done better, man.
Right.
Why didn't you offer him the prize, Rico? Why didn't you offer him the prize?
Why didn't you upsell them?
you know, when you guys were going through that example of giving feedback, right, on the calls, my first thought was, man, I wish companies actually spent that much time investing in their employees, giving them that kind of feedback, right? As opposed to a mechanical.
Well, here's the thing, though. You know, with the delivery, you're right. But like as Rico and I say on pretty much every episode, there's always the human element, right? Like you need to have a human element. We're not going to deliver this feedback to people directly. This is going to go to the manager, and they'll go through. I mean, and the reality is like. The manager is also going to double check it, right? Like it's a critic, like I said, it's treating it critically, like it's information that may not be 100%. So you have to do that, but it saves so much time that even if you have to do a bit of that, it's still way faster than it ever would have been listening to a 30-minute phone call, then another 30-minute phone call for every one of your 60 employees that you have to listen to, right?
Right.
So the reality is, that you're absolutely right? This isn't going to be like Demolition Man, at least not the call center coach. This isn't going to spit a ticket out and say you did bad or you did good, right?
Come on.
Yeah, this is going to be providing feedback, right, for those managers to be able to coach their people, right? And at some point, maybe it'll aggregate it, and you can do one, like you do a bunch of them all at once, right, for the same person, aggregate the data and go through. But you don't have the time to listen to every phone call because you're a finite person, right? And even you're not going to have 5 or 6 support. Maybe you have a quality assurance team listening, and maybe even outsource that to like wherever, right, somewhere in the globe. Are those people really going to care? They're going to care more than AI, right? Are they going to do a better job than AI of discerning the different things? Highly doubtful. Unless you're paying a lot of money, and then it probably isn't worth it to most companies, right? There's a balance there. We just did an episode on the cost of AI, like the expense of AI overall, kind of in business. And again, it's a balancing act because a lot of this stuff, you could spend a ton of money. We could go to Copilot Enterprise right now and spend $11,500 every single month for our 72-person company, right? Just on the one thing. And that would be people could talk to their Excel sheets. We'd get some optimization. Would we get that much optimization? And more, that's another decently paid employee, right? So
wait. That's 11,000 a month. I'm just thinking about that. That seems incredibly cheap to me. You've got 70 employees. How many of those are like engineers being paid so?
So
maybe don't share confidential information.
That's okay. That's okay. It's a certain percentage of the total is what I'll tell you. But no, the thing is, this wouldn't be for engineers, Mike. The Copilot stuff. I'm not talking about GitHub Copilot now. Sorry, to be really clear, I'm talking about Microsoft Copilot. Every one of our engineers, we're paying for Copilot. It's a no-brainer. It's like a no-brainer, right?
Exactly. Yeah.
But Microsoft Copilot, you have to have the enterprise license, which is a minimum of 300 people. So you have to pay for 300 licenses, enterprise. Then it's $30 per license on top of that. It equals out to $11,500 per month. We're a 72-person organization. Now, if we were Walmart, might be more of a no-brainer, right? Because you already have the enterprise. You can haggle with Microsoft on that pricing, or you create some sort of a deal, right? But we don't have that lift, and let's say small medium-sized business to be able to do that, right? So for us, it doesn't make sense. For us, it makes sense to go with ChatGPT team and to build these custom GPTs that everybody who's signed up can use. And maybe it's $1,900 a month. I think it's around that, right? To do it for the whole company. So, and it's a lot of bang for the buck, right? Because you could still upload spreadsheets and do the different things. The difference in convenience is in my Excel, I can't like type some and half the stuff you could do that it's really impressive. You could have done 10 years ago with pivot charts, right? People just don't know how to do it. So that's definitely a thing. It's lowering the barrier to entry to be able to do pretty complex stuff. Like with that call center coach, I actually had it like create me sentiment a sentiment diagram, and what it did for me was it created like a timeline, right? It was like, here was the subject here, and here's the sentiment during this section. Then here was the next subject. It even has timestamps. Freaking crazy. Took me like 2 seconds to do that. I said, hey, create me a sentiment graph, with these types of axes and with this type of data. And it just did it. It just did it like right then and there. So I could easily build that in as part of Call Center Coach. I haven't done it yet, but it's something that I probably will do, right? It's all about like what's needed, but I guess what you can do ends up being quite a bit, right? For not that much effort, right? I didn't have to do any coding to do that. I just had to have the right prompt.
Yeah. That's the big, right? Lower lower barrier to entry, commoditization of all the things.
Yep.
Yeah, let's make it all happen.
Enhancing outputs. Yeah.
Mike, I didn't expect your take to be your take there, dude. Like, I was like, whoa, you told me you're going to be the wild card, and you're the wild card. Like,
whoa,
I saw.
You want the lock on the fridge, bro? That's wild card as hell. Right? You want the robot?
I never had to unmute. Like, yeah, down. Whoa, what are you doing, Mike? I thought I knew you.
America becomes this is American, un-American.
Oh my God, it's un-American. That's so amazing. So I guess let's move on to AI in our future. I think we kind of just talked about it a lot, but like opportunities, challenges, any predictions? What are some predictions that people have? Let's do a 1-year prediction. Where do we think we'll go this year with AI?
I think Nvidia stock is going to keep going up because everyone's
they're the shovel in the goal.
This is buy sky high, sell sky higher, and that's the only way to think about it. If you're waiting for the optimal price to enter, you're doing it wrong. All that being said, it's one of those stocks you're going to have to watch and you got to exit because it will fall at some point. It's obscene. This is Tesla all over again, except multiplied by 10. So I think that story is not going to stop, and especially as we start to lower rates, which is in theory coming, you're going to see it go into the stratosphere beyond what's reasonable. It will probably become the most valuable company by the end of this year, and it will have probably less revenue than the vast majority of companies that are in the top 100. So keep that in mind. But at some point, the metal will meet the road and it'll probably correct. But in the short term, it's not stopping. So if you think it's going to stop and you're waiting for it to go back to $100, that isn't happening.
Yeah.
And
what other predictions?
They can't sell their stock, right? Like they probably have stock windows. They're just watching it go up and they can't sell. I'm guessing. Yeah.
Yeah, it's gotta be painful. I don't know the answer to that.
Golden handcuffs, is that what they call that? Yeah, I was gonna say I'm not sure because I seem to remember something about the hype cycle. You get a lot of hype and then you get this trough of disillusionment.
Yep.
And you eventually get to a point where it's like, okay, here's a practical use for this. And I don't know if we're quite in that trough of disillusionment yet or not. But I think, if we're not in that point, we're going to get there, that people are going to say, wait, this isn't that great, and it doesn't do this and it doesn't do that.
And that's what's happened with every bubble in history, right? You're literally detailing out. Like, okay, last year it was Teslas are going to change the world. This year it's they don't, work in cold weather, right? So and that seems like a pretty standard jump right after to think about during the buying.
For some of us where you live,
right? That seems like something you would have thought about. And even still, this year it's demand. Like 2 years ago, it was infinite demand. They would never have enough problems. Now Tesla is producing vehicles faster than they can sell them, right? Yep. And the margin is just not there, right? So initially you see infinite margin, can't possibly lose, right? And later on it becomes something that's all of a sudden more tangible. We haven't hit that tangible epoch yet, and we probably will, but I'm not sure it's going to happen even this year. I think that it's good enough of an advance that it will take probably 2, maybe 3 years for it to stop. And between now and then, there's going to be some crazy changes in terms of what the market thinks is going to happen.
Yep. I will say that so Mike and I, from the time that we started this project with Antics, we had that hype cycle, very early on, and we were like just Chat GPT alone, it can do all of these things. And then as you start working with them, more and more, because we kind of adopted it, right, and jumped straight into it, and we play with it on a constant basis going forward. we see where those things lie, that they, you know, where the inadequacies are. The problem is that, one, mass adoption by the public. Not everybody's buying into this. You're going to have a greater portion of the population, again, like we talk about, that don't know how to create a PDF, you know, a simple task like creating a PDF. Not to slight them, it's just not in their wheelhouse or not interested in it. Now you apply that to AI. There's a lot of folks that see stuff now. I mean, you probably see the videos online all the time. It'll be a real thing. And Mike and I, you know, most people could tell it's a real thing and they'll go, oh, that's AI. Like,
right.
Look, I don't know how good you think AI is right now. It's not there, you know, there's some convincing things out there, but most of it is not that great yet. Right. So as far as getting everybody on board for an adoption cycle, that's going to take time. So I don't think you're going to see any great thing with that. And the other thing is I think that hype cycle is going to be delayed just slightly, because there's a bunch of us that are playing with it, but everybody else is like, I don't really need it. I don't need it right now. So I don't think
I have a question. So do you guys think the hype cycle is similar to like Web3? I feel like it's the same energy that I'm getting from like Web3 and NFTs
and crypto. You know, when
NFTs died.
Remember when Dogecoin, right, a couple of years ago? Yeah, there was a few of us that were tracking the market with Ethereum and stuff, but then all of a sudden those meme coins came out and the hype cycle went crazy, and Wall Street bets, and everybody could play that market. I mean, that was a fun time to play in the market, right? You'd spend a lot of time in and out. Yeah, I think that's what you're going to see. Is you're going to see people that get crazy about it, thinking, well, this is the answer to everything. But I see a lot of these corporations also incorporating it into everything. So you know, you're going to have, if you Google something now, you get this little thing at the top that's AI generated, right? That has the feedback on top. If you don't just go straight to Chat GPT, and then each one of these devices, they're going to implement some version of AI. So people are going to have a little taste of it, but they're not going to have the big picture of what it actually does.
So Mike Onslow,
just to add one thing.
Have you played with that Microsoft Copilot? Because what little I've seen of it's like, I feel like I'm seeing the reincarnation of Clippy. You know?
Yeah, it is. I mean, the reality is it's Clippy without the Clippy. Like, I've seen that. That's a meme, right? Like, I think it's definitely better than Clippy, right? Like, I think that it has more potential than Clippy. Clippy was pre-programmed with a lot of data and like tree logic, right, or branching logic and whatnot. And I think this, I'm seeing it with, like, let's say AI, lead gen dialers and stuff like that. It's better than Clippy, right? Like, I make a joke about Ferris Bueller's, and it can Day Off, and it can, like, oh yeah, I saw that movie too, right? And, like, makes a reference from it. Like, I'm not kidding. This is a real thing. It's called Bland.ai, and it's a dialer, an AI voice dialer software that sounds very realistic, and you could train your own voice on it. So the reality is, it is not Clippy. Just like that, it's not Clippy, right? It's gonna come up. It's using really a combination of things, right? Like, you're right. LLM AI is the predicting the next thing, but not all AI is like that, right? You have discriminative AI, you have different, like, AI as a whole. Like, one thing that I listened to yesterday, and I'll plug this on the show, is a podcast called Me, Myself, and AI. And they had a guy from Walmart. Funny enough, Rico, they were talking about, he's been in engineering at Walmart. They've had AI since early on. They had a few other people on there. And one of the things that they said is the people who are really wildly succeeding with AI right now are not the people who jumped on the hype train in last May or April. They're the people who have actually been doing AI for 5-10 years, right? And now it's blowing up and allowing those people to be even more effective, and they're able to produce the AI at scale, which I think is the biggest challenge, right? We're in this section of, like, hey, opportunities, challenges, predictions. I think that the challenge with AI right now is still scale. We're building demos half the time, right? But can you scale that, right? How does that scale?
Lance, did you have something?
Yeah, and that's sort of the point, though, right? Yeah. Is like the reason why NVIDIA stock is going to the moon is because people are purchasing video cards. It's not because AI is good. And the point is, the perception of AI is that it will be really good in 3 years. And so therefore people are going to keep buying these cards. You have Facebook spending hundreds of billions of dollars, literally spending their entire revenue budget, crashing their stock just so they can create these new technologies, right? So what's actually driving it It actually isn't the fact that technology is good, despite the fact that's what it feels like to the vast majority of people watching the action. What's actually driving that stock forward is the fact that the video cards are being produced. So the moment that changes, it'll go a different direction. But for the time being, I don't think that's changing.
I guess,
I got to say too, I'm starting to think that Facebook has got the corporate version of shiny new object syndrome, man. Because they're going to do the metaverse.
I'd agree.
And, and it's like, oh, forget the metaverse. Now here's AI.
How do you think they built Threads? Do you think they built Threads with engineers? Well, they did, but it was actually largely an internal LLM that helped them build that, right? Like he literally talked about that on one of the calls like a couple of months back.
Yeah.
Like that literally is what allowed him to enter the market. So I'm going back, tying in your earlier thing about data. Data is what will protect Twitter because Twitter has all of the data. Threads does not. And as a result, that is what your moat is. Your moat is your user base. And to be clear, that isn't changing. If you look back through the history of software, everyone was always able to make a clone. The problem is they couldn't make a clone that had all the data. And if you don't have the data, you don't have the user base, you don't have the action, really.
That is a great point, Lance. That's what I was talking about earlier with the custom GPTs and having an external API that had like private data that other people just don't have access to. I 100% agree there. One other quick prediction that I have is I think China is going to really go hard they already are, to catch up to NVIDIA in the US, right? With the hardware to support training AI models that are bigger and better. They're already doing stuff with these massive wafers where they're creating, chips that have essentially like thousands of cores on one chip. And they're doing that because obviously we've got a lot of sanctions on those exports, right? So they're obviously NVIDIA is trying to get them through. They made that H800 or whatever, which is just below, but it's so transparent that everybody like sees it and yells about it. Whereas China just knows kind of like, hey, we'll keep going with that for now, but like we're going to make our own thing. I don't know how far they'll get with it a year, but I definitely see them, really going for it. And I'm guessing that it's going to, possibly support something like CUDA, which is NVIDIA's, NVIDIA's framework, right, for AI in general. I'm not sure what the IP is on CUDA or how open that is, but I believe it's pretty open. CUDA, Python, if they can make chips that can actually support that types or GPUs that can support it, it'll be pretty interesting to see what they can do over the next year, right? So,
it'd be really interesting. Oh, go ahead. I'm sorry.
Well, I just wanted to ask. I don't think we talked about so I don't know if this is predictions or not, but I want to get your take on how you feel about I think there's like a lot of college and teenage women that have their like fake nude images, right? And I think they're like getting bullied for that stuff. And I think wasn't there like a robocall? Yeah, I mean, robocall with like the president saying whatever.
Yes. Yeah.
I mean, is that going to get worse then, or?
Yeah.
Yes.
Okay. It gets better and better and easier to do this stuff every single hour, probably. I was able to, spin up, like basically create with Stable Diffusion a complete person, like a person that could be an influencer. And then with Face Swap, create like hundreds and hundreds of pictures. And it was surprising how much I could do. You could just create a person that doesn't exist, or you take a current person, and Face Swap is really good now. It's kind of ridiculous, right? You wouldn't like, you might, I'm not saying you would, you might know if you knew the normal signs, but like at a glance, it's very likely, even if you knew what to look for, it's so good that you probably wouldn't know that it is, right?
And that's sort of the thing. We're in early days with it. The nonsense meter is not that strong. Like, to be clear, we've been in the social media age for going on 15 years now, and we're still having serious like societal problems with basic communication, and it's literally all about the expectations of what you think they're going to say, as well as the deepfakes that are influencing people, right? The vast majority of everything you look at on Twitter these days, they're all deepfakes. They are intentionally trying to make you think that your political leaders are not who you think they are. right? The only way you can actually trust if that's real, unfortunately, is not to find it on social media. You have to go to a mainstream news. But at the same time, can you trust the mainstream news? And this is the big narrative that's going on, right? And the fact that you can, like, there is deep fakes every day, hundreds of them. Like, they think that Biden's turning away from Xi Jinping, and this has gone viral, and everyone's convinced of it, right? So you have to really, really, really tune your nonsense meter. And the society, just in general, I would say 75% of society just doesn't have it to know what's nonsense and what isn't. And that's
a lot of nonsense, right?
Exactly. It's everywhere.
It is.
Like,
it's a lot of trolling.
It's constant. There's a lot of nefarious actors. We covered it was recently, actually, when stuff jumped off in the Middle East a couple of months ago, and there was it was an infant deep fake under some rubble. I don't know if you saw that or not, but the knee-jerk reaction was it was right away. People were like up in arms about it. I showed it to Mike, and Mike was like, "That's AI." I know it's AI from looking at it. You know it's AI if you looked at anything from AI, but you looked on social media, and that picture just kept circulating for weeks, and people were really, really upset about it, going, look at this stuff going on. And you're right. They want to go and do something about it right then, right? They get upset. They want to go do something. Again, back a few months ago, I think, before they aligned some of the generative art stuff, I saw political leaders look just like them, running from the police, being tackled by NYPD, put in handcuffs, right?
Yeah.
That whipped people up and incensed them. And that's one of the problems I think we're definitely going to have over this year. Without the adoption by the masses, there's going to be a lot of discernment problems. And there's going to be a lot of things that people go out and act on because of deep fakes. Big
do you guys feel like the companies that are pushing forward on AI have some kind of obligation to intentionally introduce some errors? Like, like the thing
what's
about,
an error, though? What do you mean by what's an error?
Like some of the images, like they have an extra arm, or they've got 6 fingers on a hand, or something like this. Do they have an obligation to like deliberately introduce that into
try to poison that well a little bit?
Yeah, so that people will know, hey, I see there's 6 fingers there. That can't be right.
Well, the problem is. Yes, but there are also folks like you in the world who know how to program stuff. Like you could pull down the open source, adjust it slightly, because I can tell you the guardrails on, say, Midjourney with doing generative art, the guardrails are there. So if you literally put in nude woman, boom, you're going to get a thing back and it says this violates community guidelines, yada yada yada. Right. But if you were to take Stable Diffusion, right, Mike, put it on your PC, you could probably use prompts to kind of get around that.
You can, that's what a lot of, but you can't with Stable Diffusion, and at least with the libraries that I've used. But there are definitely sites and different things that allow you to do that. Right, it's all about whether those guardrails are on or the guardrails are off, right? There's actually something called on-stable diffusion, which doesn't limit. It's literally similar to Midjourney. You install it in Discord and you can use it, and it's like rails off, right? That type of stuff. So the reality is, like, one note on the fingers too, Honorio. So I could actually take images and just pop them into Stable Diffusion, and there are settings in there that where it can fix the fingers, fix the eyes. You just circle, you take it, you circle those areas, and it just fixes them right away. Like it'll put it right back to where it is. So even if you did something like that, we're past the point where that's going to stop anybody from anything, right? Like, and the thing is, like, I can run that on my computer and generate thousands of images overnight while I'm sleeping, right? The only thing that's costing me is maybe some energy, right? Like my computer, some energy, some electricity, right? So the reality is, like, this stuff is already happening, like, and I don't think you're going to slow it down or stop it by poisoning is a whole nother thing, right? Like, artists are definitely using, like, there's something called Nightshade AI to sort of like put a watermark into their art that goes online that you can't see the watermark, but like it will train AI purposely to mess things up. And so that's interesting. I wrote a little blog post on that a while back because I thought that's really interesting, right? So
I think we have to make go ahead.
I was just gonna say on that question, so would any of you agree with saying, okay, should we hold a car manufacturer liable, right, because somebody goes and gets drunk and goes out and has an accident, right? I mean, isn't that ultimately it's the person's actions, right? They did it. So is it OpenAI's fault that, say, DALL-E 3 through their ChatGPT made an inappropriate image that looked like a certain politician? Where do you feel that's similar as far as an argument or not?
I think 100% it will wind up. It'll wind up as a landmark case within 5 years. There's no doubt in my mind there will be some major political incident that will ultimately lead back to AI generating something, and it will ultimately wind back directly on their desk. I mean, it wouldn't shock me. We just spent 2018 through 2022 exonerating Facebook of all their silliness, and even just 2 weeks ago, he's literally apologizing for all the damage. And that's just text driven by humans. Now we're talking about text driven by a machine that ultimately is being redriven by humans.
Yeah.
So of course it'll come back. It's just when and how much, and will it bankrupt them?
And how
I
much
think it's
should we
the
let
onus, right? I think it's the onus you were getting at there, Rico, right? Who's the onus on? The one who created it or the one who trained it? The person who made the car or the person who drove the car?
Yeah. I was reading something and I thought it was very interesting. If you look at history, 2,000 years ago, people may have thought the earth was flat. There were diseases that people died of that we would never worry about these days. We've made all kinds of advances in science. We've made all kinds of advances in using electricity and stuff like that. But our politics are basically what the Greeks invented, in 500 BC.
Yeah.
Representative government, the Spartans invented that. I mean, we haven't progressed at all in that realm. And unfortunately, it's hard for us. It's hard, you can't really, once the genie's out of the bottle, you can't shove it back in. You can't say, hey, this technology doesn't exist anymore. You've got to deal with it. But politically, to have the right mechanisms to deal with this, the lawmakers to understand this and figure out what should happen. Yeah, there's going to be a lot of pain. There's no question.
So there's a couple precedents, and I've got a couple random thoughts to go with that. Right, I think the last thing we want is for a bunch of laws to try to address this problem. Right, we already have the photocopy law for money that, try to bring a dollar bill into Photoshop and see what happens. Right?
Yeah.
Right. And I think we have to assume that even though we're not quite there, we're getting really, really close to any generated anything to being indiscernible from the reality that it's supposed to represent. Right. Have you guys followed the Leica cameras, what they're doing now?
I haven't.
No.
But they're essentially embedding the latest M cameras with an encryption chip that will absolutely positively identify any image, whether it's been altered or not from the original. Right. And I think our solution,
is there a tie into P versus NP there? Is there a way to basically reverse engineer it backwards?
They're not there. No.
That would be interesting. You can file anything that's been created and confirm that it's generated, right? That's intense.
Well, the thing is, and I think we've got to get there, right? Is there has to be, if this is my camera registered to me, almost like a weapon, and this photo can be brought back to me, right? That's a step. That's a step in showing cause or whatever. I would much rather see technological solutions addressing technological problems, as opposed to having laws that would be frustrating.
Canada's a great demonstration of that.
So frustrating, right?
We got some silly laws lately around tech, man.
Yeah, I like that take a lot, right? Technological solutions to technological problems, and so I would agree with that. I will just make one quick note about the inverse of that, right? Which is to take an image and determine whether it's generated by AI. There are already tools like that, but and even text pieces, right? Like there are tools to try and determine if it's AI, but they are not good. They are not accurate. And even ChatGPT used to have a tool that did this. They took it down. They just know that it doesn't give you a high enough percentage of success that it can be trusted, right? So it's a much harder problem to solve than, to Mike's point, where you've got encryption embedded and it's already in it from the start. It just makes it much simpler. So
Called, sorry, just real quick. It's called content credentials technology.
Nice. This is awesome. That's really exciting. That's something I'm going to definitely be looking more into, Mike. So I'm glad you brought that up.
Something for sure. Appreciate that.
Yeah, that's pretty
interesting. That's very interesting.
Cool. Does anybody else have anything to say? You know, like your skeptical opinion, you know, different things. I kind of think I do want to go around and just like for the last thing, let's do a closing. Maybe a couple things. You know, maybe your overall thought on AI coming into this, and if you learned anything or anything was interesting to you, so your overall take out. And I'm thinking we'll just go around the table, the virtual round table here. But before I do that, is there anything that anybody else wants to say just in closing or talking about the opportunities, challenges, even the ethical stuff we were talking about earlier?
I don't think we addressed the corporations, right?
Let's just hand wave that. They're fine. No, I'm just kidding. Ralph, go ahead. Go ahead.
Well,
that was important.
Are they mostly like American, like California companies? Like they're all mostly American companies like pushing this progress, right, for AI. Is that correct?
It would seem.
I would say, I mean, the U.S. is definitely the furthest ahead. That's a guarantee, right? Like other countries are trying to catch up to us, and we're trying to prevent them from catching up to us. Yes, Silicon Valley, I think, is definitely the epicenter for this, right? But I think all over the place this is happening, right?
So I don't know if it was Rico or Nario talking about just if they have a responsibility to either poison the well or whatever, have guardrails. But if it's American capitalism, then no, right? They're not. Right? Is that a pessimistic take?
No, I mean, in theory, you look at again, you mentioned the nonsense with Facebook the past few years, right? And some of these other tech companies. What we know for sure is they weren't being upfront with people. You know, they were doing things behind the scenes, and then it comes out and nothing really happens with it. It continues on. So I think we're going to continue seeing that going forward. I will tell you that in my own, research that I've done with ChatGPT, I do see some definite biases on the information it was trained on, with questions that I ask and stuff. So I'm concerned, as far as a skeptic, I'm concerned about who controls the information, who's feeding it from, the other side of it, and what that's going to do to us all over time. Because if you're told every day everything's hunky-dory, you're getting the information and you're like, oh, this is great information, what a great tool, and you never question it, where do we end up, right? So but I think from my experience with it, I definitely think there's a heavy-handed backside to it that is that direction of the United States that's feeding it.
I tend to agree with Lance too, because I think I don't worry so much about deep fakes of really famous people like politicians and stuff like that. What worries me is when someone creates a deep fake because they got some vengeance against a private citizen to make them look bad, destroy their reputation, because people may kill themselves over stuff like that.
I mean, teenage girls, right?
But it's it's real. That's much more frightening to me than worrying about like somebody putting out a video of some politician and you say to yourself, well, that can't be right, that can't be true. Somebody gets it into their mind that they want to destroy someone's reputation, and they're just going to spit out these deep fakes, and people just don't question them. That could be a very, very bad thing.
And that was a point I raised to Mike and Dave the other day when we were having a conversation on this. I had this idea for kind of like a storyline that goes along with AI. And this is kind of based on reality now. There's a lot of people who have no idea what we're talking about in this room currently, right? And now you take that and you're going to, let's say, for instance, yeah, exactly. So let's say, for instance, tomorrow, the police show up in your area and they say, hey, we got you on camera doing A, B, and C, right? And we have this recording and yada, yada, yada. We're going to have to place you under arrest. And you're going to say, well, I wasn't there. And they're going to say, yeah, well, we have this stuff, right? So then what's the first action that's going to happen? You get arrested. You're going to go to jail. They're going to book you. Then you're going to have to get an attorney. You're going to have to work it out. Who's the jury? It's a jury of your peers. Most people have no idea. They have no ability to discern right now. And you're going to have a district attorney who also probably doesn't feel that way. Your defense attorney is probably going to be like, I have no idea about AI. This is going to be a tough case. Where does that place you? And it can happen very, very easily. It's again part of my skepticism, but these are things that Mike and I talk all the time about. There was a while back, there was a photo posted on the internet, and Mike said, "Well, I could recreate that and put you in that photo in 5 minutes." And that's the reality of it. But the implications of now with voice cloning, with face swapping, you can make it look like surveillance footage and all the other stuff. You're right. That's something that we do need to be mindful of. And I personally don't want to be tried by a jury of my peers about, seeing me on a video that I know I wasn't there, that was created with AI. And I was kind of skeptical when we did voice cloning and played with that a little bit. Mike sent me a clip today. Here's a good for instance. I said, Mike, could you send me that outline? I'm on the road and I'm going to get home right before we do this table talk. And Mike took the outline and dropped it into, was that HeyGen that did that?
11 Labs. 11 Labs. Yeah.
He had cloned his voice with 11 Labs. I get this WAV file on my phone and it's Mike running through that thing and it sounds just like Mike reading it off of the outline.
It's like, hey, I knew it would be easier for him to listen to it than read it, right? And even though you could have Siri read it, 11 is really good and it's in my voice, right? So, it's interesting. I'm a techno optimist. So the reality is I find a way to use this in pretty much everything, and I'm already paying for the service. So I'm like, here's another good example with the voice coding at 11 Labs. When I go out of office now, I don't have an AI voice do my recording. I make a script for my recording and I feed it through 11 and it sounds exactly like me. And I don't have to do a million takes to get that. And it's a long message.
But is it monotone or does it have the inflection and
everything?
No,
dude.
Mike?
It is just like me. Because I train my
It even does like nervous flicks and all kinds of weird stuff.
Yeah,
it's shockingly crazy.
Yeah, the hand thing with HeyGen, right?
Yeah, you could do it. You could do it video too. Exactly. So the reality is and again, you have to my 11 Labs. I would never give up my password for that. I have 2FA on it. HeyGen, which is where I train my video avatar. Same thing. You do not want somebody getting their hands on that. Not to say that they couldn't, but just protect that with everything you have, right? So
one robocall to the FBI, and
I could be a robot right now.
Of me winning the gold medal at the Olympics doing pole vaulting.
I'm a deep fake.
See who believes that.
Yeah. There you go. Exactly. Well, awesome. I mean, let's kind of close it down here. Like I said, I want to go through and each person kind of what your initial thought was when you walked in the the virtual room for the first time, and kind of if you learned anything or there's anything in your mind that you didn't think you'd necessarily gain by talking to the rest of the folks. Honorio, we'll actually start off with you this time.
Okay. I gotta say, much I'm kind of skeptical. I do kind of agree with Mike K that there could be some really great things coming out of this AI stuff. And I just think we just like when people started driving cars, it was like, here's a big advance forward in human capability and everything. Yet we got to also be careful we don't run people over. And we got to figure out, I think it's especially on us as technologists, people who understand the technology, to take the lead and say, okay, this, we gotta figure out some ethical guidelines so that people who are trying to do the right thing know what to do. And those people who don't care about doing the right thing, we're not going to be able to help stop them anyway. But the people who are trying to do the right thing have some guidance and say, okay, this is ethically allowable or this is not, and keep advancing it too. So I think it'll be interesting to see regardless. And I will pass it over to Lance.
Thanks, Honorio. So this Leica camera thing, that's the first I've heard of that. But the idea of being able to put a digital footprint in sort of a created item to confirm whether or not it's been changed. I'm curious to, understand that a little more. And chances are that kind of a thing can be applied in many places to confirm whether or not something's been manipulated and it is the original item. That's basically like your NFT concept reborn inside of something else, right? Which is using the power of cryptography. My only concern with that is hopefully cryptography is never broken, because then for sure we have no chance. Going back to the trust of computers and the trust, I mean, we haven't learned to trust our people, let alone trust a computer, because the people can control the computer. So I would say I'm more afraid now than ever. And at the same time, I hope our political situation doesn't take a really dark turn, and that our leadership, we hopefully have to trust in our democracies to put the right leaders in control. Because they'll be the only thing that probably can protect a nuclear war should one of these systems go rogue and decide to attack Russia or something crazy like that. Hopefully they're able to realize that, hey, this is AI gone wrong. We're really sorry. We'll take responsibility and just own it, right? The reality is that is probably in our future. How many accidents did we have with nuclear technology? There's at least 4 in the history books that thankfully will not be repeated. But AI and that together is really scary. So yeah, this has been a great discussion, and I appreciate being invited.
Mike K, you want to go next?
Sure. It's funny you mentioned, like, I'm sorry, let me start over. I did not expect to be the AI optimist of the group by any stretch.
Wild card.
Right. And when I hear things like, oh, we got to make sure that the right person's president because one of these AI bots could like start World War III. Like, see, my mind's going the opposite way. Like, if I could choose between the 2 likely candidates for president of the United States, I'm going to name any names, not to be political, or give me an AI bot, I might be voting for AI bots.
That's how everybody got on board with AI. You heard it here first,
right? And we've used.
You heard it here first. Mike is starting the AI party.
We've talked a lot about cars, and I just did a quick look. Right, we lost 20,000 people to highway accidents last year. Right. And even though we have to kind of keep our hands on the wheel for Teslas and some of these others, like, I have to believe that within a pretty short order, right, those numbers will start going down the more that we can rely on something other than humans texting. All right. Like, whatever. Yeah. So I'm highly optimistic that there's a lot of good that comes from all of this. And I'll just throw out one of my passing ideas. Like, I hope I'm still here when we can generate movies on demand, like Netflix, like just prompt entertainment, right? Hey, give me a James Bond like movie, but make the main person Columbo, right? And you know what? Set that in Detroit, Krakow, right?
Yes.
And
I love that idea.
I mean, you know what? Make it 90 minutes. Because I gotta go in 95, right? Like,
I hope I'm around. I hope I'm around as well. That is, I've done a lot of things, and I've been really going hard on this probably for a year and a half now, and I haven't thought about that exact idea. And I love that idea, right? Like, it's like that talk about the ultimate and personalized content, right?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I mean, we're getting pretty close there. Like, we can have ChatGPT write us a short story.
Oh, absolutely. Yeah.
And now you can take your image that you create based on your storyline and put it into Final Frame or Runway ML, and it animates those pictures for you, so you can start building, your movie out. Yeah. Which people are doing with 4-second videos to 12 seconds.
Yeah, Mike K, when you build that movie, man, let me know. I want to watch it.
Yeah, for sure.
All right, Ralph.
That sounds like a Black Mirror episode waiting to happen. So.
One of my favorite shows. Yeah,
same here.
Except for this last season was a little weird.
Yeah.
All right.
Yeah. So, Mike K, like, you're on your point about politicians, I think there was a AI run CEOs or some experiment in the last couple months, right? And I think the AI bots did much better, they said. So I don't think that's too far off.
Mm-hmm.
But,
Yeah, and I think that there's a trust element there, right? Right,
Yeah.
from like trusting a computer, trusting an Excel spreadsheet, trusting a calculator, like
Literally taking your hands off the wheel.
yeah,
Yeah.
it just upping the ante as we go. I'm sorry, go ahead.
Yeah. So for
The
me,
politics around that are going to be crazy, by the way. Like, you think
Yeah.
the right is crazy right now. Wait till you take away their ability to make a choice.
Yeah.
Oh, boy.
America. Yeah. So for me, I started. I don't think I was a skeptic. I think I was indifferent or more annoyed because like I feel like the word like AI is slapped on everything now, and like I'm annoyed at VC companies that do everything AI. I mean, like HR recruiting AI, everything's just AI, and like, that's kind of annoying. But so one thing I definitely want to explore more from this conversation, I think like exploring, like Lance mentioned, and like this troubleshooting in my day-to-day job. I think someone mentioned instead of Stack Overflow, right? This is their first thing. So I that really piqued my interest. I think that would help like kickstart all my issues, right, and my tickets. That's a good way to start instead of Stack Overflow. So yeah, I'm glad we all chatted.
To add to that, it's really good at finding little inconsistencies in your code too. For example, the like writing test drivers with it. This is something that I'm going to be using a lot more, but I have in recent days. One of my associates that was working on something, I generated some test cases to go against his work. And it found all kinds of little problems with just random little test cases that it generated. And of course, some of them are not very good. Going back to that, you have to still have a human that makes the decision on whether or not the test case actually makes sense. But it's really good at figuring out those boundaries. Like, it's really good at figuring out those boundaries. It's shockingly good. I mean, that goes back to the 70s with logical proof analysis that was going on back then, right? It was always very good at that. What it's not so good at is that initial spark, right? And once you give it that initial spark, it's really good at figuring out what to do from there.
Yeah, that's a good point. And Lance, you know what that just reminded me of is when I started coding, I was okay at coding, but I couldn't create something from the ground up, right? And I realized very early on in my career that the ability to code versus the ability to create something from the ground up, like you have nothing and you need an outcome and you just need to build it from the ground up, was a whole different skill set. And I think that right now AI is much better at the latter, right? And not so great at the initial. Though I will say, like, you can iterate it with it 100%. The Elixir code thing with Noria, what I did with it one time was I actually wanted to treat it kind of like a junior developer, right? Like, if I don't have the time to code this myself, but let's here's a Trello card. I made a Trello card, and I gave it the contents of that Trello card, and I said, please code this for me. That's where we started. And like, it came out with an initial iteration, and it was like, okay, but like there were a million like big functions and stuff. I'm like, wow, these functions, they really seem like they're kind of big, like it's just like I'd be talking to somebody and like, it's like, oh yeah, you know what, that does make sense. Let's break it down into X, Y, and Z. And then I'm like, yeah, this is cool. I said, this is still in one module though. Like, maybe we could break out modules based on business logic. And it did. Boom, boom, boom. Gave me 3 modules that all made sense and composed together, right? And so it was about 60 different back and forths, but like, that was okay. It's like the kind of conversations I might have with somebody, right? And so again, I think AI is best at augmentation and not replacement, right? Like, if you just use AI like full stop and send the email exactly how ChatGPT told you, then you're the person who you should be worried about losing your job, right? Rather than, I think that the people who really know how to use AI and know their job well, like they know both of those things, are going to be the people who like upskill and just like thrive, like truly thrive, right? All right. Well, thanks everyone for showing up. Really appreciate it. You're our first set of guests, and have a great rest of your night. Appreciate it.
Thanks, guys.
Thanks, guys.
Thank you.